Right, Joe. So this is section 5.12, Women in Agriculture. And so this is our last section for Unit 5. We're actually going to jump to Unit 7 after this. And in Unit 7, we will be going further into a fair amount further into gender inequality. And so we're going to kind of go over this one, but this is definitely not by any stretch all we're going to be talking about in terms of gender equality. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is, again, Women in Agriculture. And here's kind of what we're doing. Role of females in food production, distribution, and consumption varies in many places depending on the type of production involved. And a lot, as we're going to see, there's a lot of cultural elements to this as well as economic. So when we look at this map here, so take a look. This is employment in agriculture percentage of females. So you can see down here, here's the key, less than say 6%, then greater than 47%. And so you can kind of take a look at this map and see where in the world women have a higher percentage of agriculture. And so it jumps out pretty clearly that sub-Saharan Africa, there's definitely a high percentage. South Asia, there's a very high percentage. And so what we want to look at is what may account for those differences across the world. Okay, and so obviously there is going to be some cultural influence there. We know, going way back to hunter-gatherer days, that the men were usually the hunters and the women were usually the gatherers. And so there is some tradition there, some culture there that has come forward. And so it's hard to say exactly how much influence that is, but it's definitely part of it because when you look at other parts of the world, that's definitely not holding true. And that's because of these other things. So the impact of mechanization, we've talked a lot about all the tools and implements that are used in agriculture. And generally, when those things are used, the farmers tend to be more male. Okay, and we also have this impact of urbanization. A lot of women moving into the cities because of economic opportunity, and so we kind of have this little trifecta here of culture, mechanization, and urbanization, and that helps gives us some of the reasons for why this picture looks like it does. All right. Uh, Now, when we look at food consumption, this is also, who gets the calories within a country. This also has some cultural issues surrounding it as well. And so, if we're looking at patriarchal societies, and those are societies where males are more dominant, a matriarchal society would be where women are more dominant. But when we look at these patriarchal societies in developing countries, generally if there's any type of malnutrition going on within a country, it would probably be more towards females being more malnutrition than males. Okay, and then obviously some environmental influences can come into food consumption. Availability of food is clearly a big one, and we did the article on food insecurity. That was in the U.S., so it's a little bit different than others, but I mean, hunger is hunger, no matter where you are. So anyway, so let's take a look. This is the share of agricultural landowners. So this one was the people employed, and this is the percentage of females that own land. And so the blue here represents 28% and up, and so and less than, I guess it's greater than 35, but you get the idea. So the dark blue has a high percentage of female landholders, and the yellow represents a very limited amount of agricultural land being owned by females. And so, what are some things that might account for this? Again, culture could be part of it. If we take a look here, you know, this distinction is pretty dramatic. If we look at North Africa and West Asia, this is very low rates of land ownership for females, agricultural land ownership. And when we go just right across the Mediterranean, we've got these very high incidents of ownership of land. And so, again, probably mostly cultural. You can see the U.S. here. We're not very high by any stretch. Canada checking in high. The west coast here of South America, and so anyway, and so one of the things to keep in the back of your head is, the more availability of land ownership, the more potential there is for females to do better as farm workers. Okay, if you own the land, that's a whole lot better than just working on it for somebody else. All right, so Percentage of females employed in agriculture. Again, this is something that we can look at in terms of, like development of a country. Is this going to be more of a developing country or more of a developed country? And so you can see down here in this table, if it's red, it means it's below 2%. And if it's green, it's above 70%. And so generally speaking, and again, always exceptions, but generally speaking, the developed countries have a much lower percentage of women employed in agriculture as opposed to men. Okay, the developing countries, developing countries are going to have this higher percentage, and so again, we're kind of seeing uh, South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. These two areas are less developed. Uh, if we look at things like GDP per capita, we've talked about that in class. We'll get to it in the next unit, but the amount of income per person on average in a country, it's pretty low in these countries, and so this is one characteristic of developing countries. Okay, very high percentage of females employed in agriculture, and there's others, certainly, but with that. So let's take a look. Just at some more data, and again, with all the charts and everything, just trying to create a picture of. Oh, hang on just a sec. So anyway, sorry about that. So I wanted to just show you some different data sets, basically that help kind of paint this picture of what female agricultural variables are like. Okay, and so this one down here, this shows how employment in agriculture female percentage varies by country. And so you can see here's kind of the scale with a low down here and a high up here. And so again, this is very similar to the one that we just looked at. And you can see where there are more females in agriculture. So China, Mongolia. So, it's definitely Southern Asia and most of Asia here, Southeast Asia as well, and then Sub-Saharan Africa, pretty high amount. Share of agricultural landowners who are female, we looked at that one. Do married men and women have equal ownership rights to property? And so, if those laws, and that's very cultural, if those laws aren't there for females to own property, then clearly that's going to have an impact on this map. So, we can look in some of the sub-Saharan African countries, again, over here and parts over here. But, most countries seem to have equality for ownership of private property. And then gender equal inheritance. And so this just means that, when parents pass away and they leave things to their kids, do the males and females have do they get equal inheritance? Okay, or are there laws precluding that? And so you can see, take a look here. So here we are in North Africa and West Asia, and you can compare this down here with ownership here. And so that's a pretty strong correlation. There's all, there's not necessarily causation, but there's a pretty good chance we can guess that this inheritance, and again, this is getting back to cultural stuff, has, plays an impact with that land ownership. Alrighty. Just a couple more real quick. Gender inequality index. Just real quick, because we're going to talk a lot more about this in the next unit. But generally speaking, darker red is worse off for women. Light yellow is better off for women. So we'll get into that. Women's economic opportunity index. We'll look at that again as well. But take a look over here. This is percent of women in the labor force working in agriculture. And again, we've kind of shown these pictures already, but 76 to 98%. Again, we would expect that to be more developing country range. Also, this 51 to 75, probably the same thing. And then as we get to the lower numbers, that would tend to lend itself more towards developed countries. So what I want you to do, we're going to look at political, economic, and cultural. All right. And so these slides are a little bit out of order. Let me do this. So there was an AP question not too long ago that looked at what were some of the obstacles for women working in agriculture to achieve equality and empowerment. Okay, and so what I want you to do, and you can pause the video. I'm not going to read every single one of these off to you, but you can pause and just want you to jot down a few of these. Okay, and so when we talk about some of these obstacles, again, we do that ESPN thing, economic, social, political, and environmental, if it applies. And so, what are some of the political reasons that some political obstacles for women to achieving equality? And so, obviously, policies preventing women from acquiring land, talked about that, or inheriting land. Uh, Armed conflict, unstable governments can make it difficult for women to make social network connections, and those connections can be important in terms of resources that you can get. Access to political processes, so voting and the institutions, banking, things like that. That'll be economic, sorry, but you get the idea. So any kind of political power. So lack of political power is going to play a role in women's ability to achieve some type of equality or empowerment in agriculture and certainly other areas. So exposure to environmental hazards, let's see, access to government programs. So these are some of the economics. So what I want you to do is just jot down a few of those. Some of the economic reasons. Small scale farming requires all family members to participate. Uh, let's see, men taking jobs in the cities means that women are left to grow food for home consumption or for sale and for sale. But again, just go down and read through these. Do not, I'll try and hit the highlights. Sometimes they can get denied loans, able to access inputs to improve productivity, so they can't get some of this stuff. For lack of formal education, filed labor for childcare, household work, as well as farming. So they're doing a whole bunch of other things besides just agriculture. The distance to healthcare facilities, that can be a big one. So if you're living in a rural area, it might be tough for women to get access to healthcare, which can and you know cause harm for a lot of things, not just agriculture. So women practicing subsistence agriculture may not be able to generate a surplus, and so if they have this small farm to feed their families, they may not have any left over to be able to sell. Okay, no surplus left. And then impacts of exposure to environmental hazards. And again, that goes for anybody working in some of those conditions. But yeah. And then finally, cultural obstacles. And so again, I've just hit the highlights. I told you I wouldn't read all these to you, and here I am doing it. So traditional gender roles, that's a cultural thing for sure. Men may occupy a privileged position, leaving women to do the physical labor. And they're not getting wealthy picking the crops necessarily. And that may be the case in some countries. Women hold agricultural knowledge and skills passed down to daughters, and that's the good thing. Okay. Many societies, women represent a spiritual ideal of fertility that's tied to beliefs regarding agricultural productivity. And so, again, these are cultural things. High fertility rates, raising more children hinders women's ability to achieve equality. So, if they have multiple children, 5, 6, 7 children, that makes it more challenging to achieve equality in those developing countries. Social norms preventing land ownership, inheriting land, that kind of goes into legal as well. And then finally, impacts of exposure to environmental hazards, and we kind of refer to that one as well. So, if you get a question like this, you should be able to just kind of pull not every single one of these for sure, but be able to pull one or two of these out for cultural, for economic, and then for political. All right. And so in our next unit, unit 7, then we're going to come back and pick up 6 at the end. Unit 7, there's a section on women and inequality that we're going to take a big look at this. So anyway, that's it for this one. Hope you guys have a great day, and we will talk to you later.